I would like to please confirm that we are now live streaming. Is that correct? Okay. I would also like to make sure that we have a quorum. So,
Good morning, yes ma'am, we do.
all right, thank you, Ms. Johnson, I appreciate that. The last meeting of the subcabinet was in August, and the August meeting was recorded, and that recording is available on the MCSS website. As such, there are no meeting minutes to be approved. Are there any additions to today's agenda? If there are no additions, then we're going to go ahead and proceed to today's meeting. I'd like to have a motion to add any topics to the agenda. If there are not, we will go ahead and move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
I have a motion from the Butler. Is there a second? Second. And a second by Ms. Bailey. Any discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The agenda for today is approved. We will now begin our meeting with regulations. Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. So first off, you have a packet in front of you for 144004, and that is the regulation for certification and training of school security employees and school resource officers. So very quickly, some background. The regulation was initially promulgated in 2019. Fast forward a couple of years, we learned a few things. We made some modifications to our SRO and SSE training that we deliver. As such, we determined it was necessary to make modifications to those regulations. So this time last year, we asked the subcabinet to approve for public comments some changes to that regulation. The subcabinet approved, it went out for public feedback and agreed with some of the comments, and so we tweaked and made some changes to that regulation, and then came back to the subcabinet in May asking for a second publication of the changes. So those went out for comment, and we received those comments closed in August. So what you have in front of you are the comments that we received. And for this one, there were only two. It was from the same individual. So the first comment was related to our statement of purpose within the regulation. So that section of the sort of narrative that sits at the top of the regulation that goes in the Maryland Register. They asked us in the future to ensure that we provide a little more context to the reader. So they understand what we're changing. So we agree with that. So moving forward, we're going to make sure that we do that in all of our regulations that we publish. The second, they actually identified an editing error on our part. So the statute requires school resource officers and security employees to participate in our training, but it also allows the opportunity for them to participate in a local training that meets the same requirements of our training. And when we drafted the regulation, we were attempting to remove a date, and we actually removed an entire line, which took away their statutory ability to participate in their own training. So we're asking for the regulation to be adopted with that one deletion placed back in. I spoke with council. Council agrees that it does not impact the locals in any negative way. I don't know if you have any specific comments you want to provide.
Just that the inclusion of the, it's reinserting the language which was already there, so there's no adjustment that would negatively impact the public. So there shouldn't be any reason for it to need to be republished for public comment.
So we're requesting for adoption of that regulation.
Okay, so is there a motion to adopt, COMAR 14.40.04? Okay, so move. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
So the next one is 144005, and this is critical life-threatening incident reports. When an incident occurs on school grounds that is critical life-threatening or meets the definition, local education agencies are required to conduct after-action meetings, produce an after-action report, and then we at the center are required to publish lessons learned and recommendations that come out of those incidents and those discussions. So as with 144004, these were published in 2019. We learned a lot since then. We issued some changes to the regulation this time last fall. Again, received some public comments. So we had some discussions with our local education agencies, tweaked the draft of the regulation, the changes, went back out for public comment in May, and then received, those closed in August, and we received 2 comments. So the first comment was requesting we replace an or in the language with an and. Our assessment of that is it would put the two, so it's the definition, the 2 pieces that are in the definition of critical life threatening, and it would put them in conflict with each other. Because if you look at the regulation, which is on the beginning of the second page, it was an individual being charged with a threat of mass violence. That's the first. And they wanted it to be which is meets the criteria of a threat of mass violence, but cannot be charged because the individual is under 14. So this is it should be on page 5 of your packet. Sorry, it's the one, is that a count? 144005.
Okay.
Yep. So they wanted us to put an and between those 2, right? So it's a threat of mass violence and could have been charged as a threat of mass violence, but the individual is under 14. So those are in conflict with each other. You can't be charged with a threat of mass violence and not be charged with a threat of mass violence. So we disagree with that request. The second commenter had 2 items. The first was, again, requesting that an or be replaced with an and as it relates to the school grounds. So they wanted to expand, they were concerned that it would expand the reporting of incidents or situations that were not life-threatening or when no death or injury occurred. And we disagree with that assessment of theirs. So we believe that we are still within this regulation focusing on those incidents that are critical, life-threatening, that we want school systems to conduct after-action reviews about, right, and determine what worked well, what they might need to improve so that we can then develop lessons learned and recommendations to address school safety statewide. Their second was a concern. So within the regulation, we added the ability for MCSS to make a determination that a specific incident meets the definition of critical life threat. The reason for that is we often receive notifications about incidents through the media. So not through the local education agency, not through the local school safety coordinator, but we see it on either social media or regular media outlets. And we want to ensure that we can start the process to trigger, right, the activities that tie to a critical life threatening. In other words, sit down as a group, have a discussion, what worked well, what needs improvement, and make those so that we can start to develop those lessons learned and recommendations. So again, we disagree with that request. We believe that we can be reasonable in determining what we feel meets these standard definitions of critical life threatening incidents. So those are the comments. We request to adopt it as we have changed or included the changes for the public comment that just so we're requesting adoption of the regulations.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the changes to COMAR 14.40.15?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes. MCSS has prepared the annual report for our review and approval. Ms. Burkheit, will you please provide us an overview of this year's report?
Thank you, Dr. Wilson, and happy to. Nice to see you.
Absolutely.
Yes, so before you have a printed copy of the annual report. Erin is going to also project a digital copy so we can kind of follow along. Want to really start by thanking Erin for a huge amount of work. We, in the last month, have done a variety of revisions, so you will actually notice a number of changes in addition to this year's report. So particularly we start in the front matter with an executive summary, which is really just kind of an overview of the 2023 year and what you can anticipate within the report, followed by an accomplishments page. So really kind of featuring what were those things in 2023 that we're really proud of. And as an agency have been able to increase access to our LEAs and our students and our educators, making schools safer. Following that, then you'll see a priorities page. So we moved this to the front matter from last year and really corresponds also with part of the Subcabinet advisory board, so the work that we're doing together. I'll kind of draw your attention to the 4 items that we have kind of selected as priorities, and for you to understand that these are really based on lessons learned, so speaks to what Kate was actually just talking about in terms of our critical life threatening incidents, but also After Actions National. So as we look at national events and those reports that we get in terms of lessons learned from others, what are those things that we need to make sure we're continuing to advance with all of our schools across the state of Maryland. So I'll speak to a couple of these in the report in more detail, and we can come back to those as well. So one of the nice things that we've done this year, so within the next page is your contents page. The contents page is really bookmarked to the different elements. So if you download the PDF version of this, you'll actually be able to toggle back and forth between different segments and different sections. So each one of those 5 markers there will actually take you directly to that section of the report when you're in the PDF version. So we have broken the report up into these 5 sections this year. So we'll start with required reports, then grants, programs and the other elements that we go through. So required reports on page, so this is where you get into your first kind of page number 6. Is just an easy access to all of our reports that are required legislatively on MCSS. And just want to make note that we are submitting all reports on time, actually ahead of time in all of our instances. So we appreciate all of the local efforts in terms of submitting data to make that possible. So as we move to, I want to just kind of call out, as we move to the grant section, you'll see a tab at the bottom of each one of these pages also. So that tab will also take you back to the table of contents. So if you happen to toggle to one particular section, you can go back to the contents page by using the tab at the bottom. So we're really trying to make this a really interactive document for folks to be able to find information quickly. We know that it is a document that's used often by the public to access different pieces. So on the grant section, really just want to kind of highlight the very small team at MCSS who does an amazing amount of work. Gifty will be sharing in a moment some of those grant applications and an overview of that. But within this section, you actually have sort of a small description of each grant that's administered by MCSS, as well as the total dollar amounts that were distributed within those grants. On page 8, you actually see kind of a nice breakdown for the Safe Schools Fund grant in terms of how the funds were used, as well as a bulleted list. So some items that people are using that grant money within their school systems for. So the next section on page 10 takes us into programs and resources that are administered, offered through MCSS, and so each one of those is also hot linked. So if somebody wanted to just look at the anonymous tip line, they actually could click just on that element, and it will take them right to that page within the PDF version also. So yeah, go ahead back to so he's going to click programs, and it takes us right back to that section header again. Thanks, Aaron. So within this, a couple of these programs, one of the things I want to make note of, so on each program page, what you're actually going to see is we begin with a brief overview of what the program is, followed by some research evidence. So why is this program critical? So on each page, you will see a little bit of this is what the program is, this is why this program is important, and then some data. So the data you'll find embedded throughout the report related to each program. And where you see data, we try to also use bold as a way to kind of make those data points stand out for you. So we start with our emergency preparedness planning, is followed then by kind of emergency plans on page 12. So LEAs, what we're getting from our LEAs, what information we have. On page 13, you actually see a variety of data. So one of the data collections that MCSS does that doesn't necessarily lead to an actual legislative report, but shows up in this document here, relate to the number of threats made within a school, how much time, how many hours they're spending engaged in drills and exercises or real world events. On page 14, we just kind of do a quick overview of our tabletop program, our tabletop exercises that was really became a large initiative in 2023 and very exciting. That ends up being, I think, one of our biggest hits. So on the MCSS webpage, we have a number of, a large volume of traffic going to the tabletop exercise page, which is exciting. It's all about making those emergency plans living, breathing documents and procedures within our systems. So on page 15, you actually can see at the bottom that little graphic. This is what it looks like on the web page. So when a school-based an administrator, somebody goes there, they can actually kind of select a number of different exercises to pull down and use. So the next one on page 16, The after action review guidelines and support, just want to kind of mention, so this has been this is something that we really kind of entered into at the end of this year and we'll be going into 2024. Part of what we recognized as we've modified that regulation has also been in terms of the need for support to our locals in terms of doing a really well done, effective, thorough after action meeting. And we saw a lot of variety across the 24 systems in terms of how the quality of those meetings. So we have partnered to actually develop a document that will help guide the conversation. So we've developed a form that we're just starting to roll out that is really a series of questions that individuals answer over the course of the meeting. They fill in as they complete that document. It ends up actually generating a report at the end for them. So it generates in the form of a PDF the information that's a summary of that after action conversation that allows them to then communicate back to us, right? This is what occurred. These are the lessons we've learned, and allows us then to generate that CLT report to the governor's office. So really becomes a great resource for locals in terms of making those meetings meaningful, but then also helps us to create some consistency and some nice, I think, validity across the 24 jurisdictions in terms of what we're getting from them. So on that page also, you'll see some references there to, and on page 17 to the critical life-threatening incidents last year. So we had 18 CLTs that met that definition. And that bulleted list is really kind of an overview of sort of lessons learned, which again informed our priorities, right? So as we looked at what we were learning from our locals involved in these, I want to draw your attention to the bottom of 17. One of our priorities is really related to the standardization of our response protocols. So what national research, what we know locally, the importance of us having a shared lexicon across jurisdictions, so across counties, but across stakeholder groups. So parents understand what the word secure means. School officials, students, the media, right? That when we're using these terms, people are really clear about what it implies in terms of what the emergency event is and what is actually happening within the school community. So that's one of our priorities this year, is to really try to standardize that lexicon across the state of Maryland. On page 18, we get into our school resource officer program, and again, some great data on page 19 in terms of we had 278 SRO SSEs trained this past year. That is an increase from the previous year, and we attribute that increase to the increased use of school security employees. We saw a larger volume of those being hired across different jurisdictions and needing to enter that training program.
So I do want to say on that, the SRO, what is not included here is we've just expanded this training to SRO supervisors. So one of the things we were not doing was giving some context to the individuals who supervise school resource officers to explain to them, right, what is it the school resource officer is supposed to be doing in the school, and how can you best supervise them in those activities by working with the school system, the school administrator. So we held that sort of a pilot of that class last week, had about 30 individuals, and it was incredibly successful. So all good comments.
All right, on page 20, we enter into behavior threat assessment. So in 2018, MCSS developed the model policy for behavior threat assessment. This year, 2023, we really have spent a large amount of time with a couple different additional resources. So the implementation guide, which is noted here in roughly, I guess, February, I think it was, we actually published that document and we started to do workshops across the state, meeting at first with a local level, kind of our local system level leadership teams which led really quickly for those system level leaders to say, we want you engaging with our school-based leaders. So we have, almost weekly it feels like, out doing trainings for our school principals on the importance of behavior threat assessment, what the elements of behavior threat assessment are, how they're working well with their teams within their school systems, and then really starting to recognize what are some of the behaviors of concern. What are these true warning signs that we need to be mindful of? So the implementation guide, we did a crosswalk so people understand in the model policy where they can find info, and then kind of technical assistance in the implementation guide. And then we've also done, so actually on the next page, Erin, as part of that, a resource tool for them to, our locals to be working with their team. So part of what's required within the regulation is that they're training their behavior threat assessment teams. So what we've been able to just, again, this fall start rolling out are these training scenarios and this training document. So I was actually on a phone call with one of the locals Friday talking about how they love this kind of quick reference training guide that they've been using pretty frequently within their schools. So I want to, before we move on to behavior threat assessment, though, also just really the importance of that work that we're doing. So very recently, the Oxford, Michigan after action, the Oxford, Michigan event that occurred, the after action for that was released roughly a week and a half ago. And one of the significant findings from that was that although they had a policy on behavior threat assessment, no one knew about what the policy was, and no one had really done their work training school-based folks, training people to understand the importance of behavior threat assessment to avert those types of events from happening. And then that's followed by our Safe Schools Maryland anonymous reporting system. These all end up really becoming, they really go hand in hand. So part of what we're identifying is when we're at schools talking about behavior threat assessment, it really is back to the anonymous reporting system, right? That you only know about the potential of a threat when it's reported to individuals. So these really, the two have been enhancing each other. So when we're there talking about BTA, it really creates the opportunity for us to advance the importance of the anonymous reporting system. We just finished a advertising campaign with the Maryland State Advertising Agency on the tip line, targeting our youth, so that 12 to 18 age span, using social media to really get advertisements out so that they know about the tip line. And we have definitely, when you look at the data analytics on that on page 23, we've definitely seen increased use. And it's difficult to say whether that's because there are more behaviors of concern or an increased awareness to the tip line, probably kind of both going hand in hand. We continue to see that bullying, cyberbullying is number one, number two. Over the 5 years of the tip line, it has remained in the either top slot or second top slot as tips received. Page 24, just want to, so this is our student voice programs. Last year, so in the past, this was referred to as our student focus group. We heard students, we spent a lot of time listening to students and looking at what revisions we needed to sort of make with this program. One was renaming it. So we now are actually, our students are our student advocates for school safety. So it's our SAS program. So really Student Voice is two programs. The SAS, which is this group of students who are really helping to lead some initiatives across the state and help to be a voice about what's happening. The Mix It Up Day was a great event that they led last year that we'll be doing again this year. So February 22nd, think about mixing it up. Change roles with folks, spend some time just getting to know, making new connections, building new relationships. And then the School Safety Club initiative. So this is something that you can look forward to in 2024, hearing a lot more about, is us expanding and trying to have school safety clubs in all of our buildings. So just the importance of students being really active partners in our school safety efforts. The conference, we were excited. We had a great conference, as I think Jessica reported out the last time. So this is a nice overview of some of the analytics from that. Want to also make sure you mark your calendar, July 17th and 18th. 2024 will be our the 2 days for our conference this coming year. And we welcome any of you to join us for opening remarks. It's wonderful to, you don't have to spend the whole day. I know schedules can be tough, but even joining us for part of the day, and we can be very flexible, as Secretary Beatty knows, fitting you in whenever you arrive to give you the opportunity to make some comments. And then also, folks have speaker ideas. So if you know of some great speakers that we should be reaching out to, or some ideas in terms of some topic areas, please let us know. We have started that planning process already. On page 26, the Student Safety Student Art Showcase. If you get stuff from MCSS and Gov Delivery, I've been using these photos a lot. Love them. And so this is kind of features our winning entries from our elementary, middle, and high school. Definitely a big hit, and something that we will continue to do year after year. The next section, engagement and partnerships that you have. So on page 28 speaks to our coordinated emergency response planning. So one of the initiatives in 2023 was really making sure we as state agencies are coordinating our efforts. Right? If a incident occurs, be it a school shooter type of scenario or a weather event, something large that impacts a school, are we prepared as state agencies to respond in a coordinated way? And that means that we need to know each other, right? And we need to know what we're doing. So this has been an effort that we've been, you can see some kind of analytics and data, different events that we've happening, and is ongoing. So we plan to continue to kind of partner as individuals on that effort. On page 29, kind of called out our state agency partnerships this year. So many of you will see yourselves there. And we want to thank you. So any opportunities we have to collaborate and partner on different efforts, we are always excited to do. So just kind of feature those opportunities. You'll also see then on page 31, different kind of communication efforts, and 32 our social media posts with followers. On page 32, our web page analytics. We continue to see a high volume going to our page. No, in 2024, this is, so actually Aaron, Jan, and I are kind of working on making some major updates to the web page. So you can anticipate in next year's 2024 report, we'll have that maybe as one of our accomplishments, a nice overhaul for that. And then page 33 are different community engagement events. It's just important for us to be out interfacing with the community as many opportunities as we have. And then the last section is administration. So you'll see yourselves on page 35. And then 36 is our advisory board. And then kind of the last piece is what we've added, starting on page 37, is for the MCSS leadership team, some nice bios. So the MCSS team is very diverse, and really wanted to highlight and let folks across the state be able to see the diversity that lies inside of the small, unique team at MCSS. So questions on the report, or any additions, Kate, that I didn't miss?
So I just want to say it's been 5 years. So December 5th, I started with MCSS. It'll be 5 years. And I will tell you that this is one of the best teams I've ever been. Across the board, my entire career, they're an incredible group of individuals who are so dedicated to what they do, constantly looking for ways to make improvements, ways to tweak things to make it easier for themselves, but also easier for our partners. So I really appreciate everything that they do every single day, because I certainly couldn't have done all of this by myself.
So we will be finalizing the accessibility check. We've done a lot of work to try to make sure the colors font, and we have some alt text on those photos that we have embedded. But we'll do a final check before it will be posted to the website.
This assumes it's approved.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Kim. You know, I would like to echo what Kate said. She has been here, you said 6 years now?
5
years now. I have been at the State Department for 8 years. And each and every year I see things getting better and things improving and things improving fast. And looking long term, not just short term, but what we can do in order to make schools safer. I would like to thank everyone for the work that has gone into this report. It is very evident of the fact that a lot of thought and insight has gone into making this report a reality. And I would just like to point out 3 things that I really took note of. First and foremost, that now we are also bringing the SRO supervisors into training and into knowing what's going on as far as the training that the SRO officers have been given. And that allows conversations beyond just the schools themselves. And the threat assessment training that's ongoing with the principals in the schools as well as with the school system. The schools within the school systems, I think that is absolutely phenomenal. And last and certainly not least is the fact that we are bringing students into elegant ways and into sharing it. If you've ever worked in a school for as many years as I have, you will know that students know what's going on before anyone else, and certainly being able to bring them along and having them as a part of making schools safe is certainly important. So thank you so much for that. At this time, I would like to ask is there a motion to publish the 2023 annual report. Thank you so much, Bill. Do we have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. The motion passes. Okay, and at this time, I hope I say this correctly. You can let me know. At this time, Ms. Quashie. All right. Would you please continue with the fiscal year 2024 school safe fund grant applications?
Yeah, you did say it just right, so thank you. Good morning, Dr. Watson, and good morning, members of the subcabinet. Today we have 18 applications, so before I start with anything, I'd like to throw back out to you to see how you would like us to go through this. Would you like us to look at them individually? Would you like us to maybe go by the type of request, which is, equipment versus contractual services, where we might have a group of LEs in that application? I'd like to give you the opportunity before I'm ready to go through all 18 as well, whatever works.
I would like to refer to the group, whatever it is that you think is best.
I think we can go by the type of request.
Okay.
And as you probably saw from our annual report, equipment purchase requests are among the top requests that we get in the application. And I know the annual report for FY23 showed about 40%, and that's approximate for this fiscal year as well. And before I go through each application, I think it's important to know what we have this year in terms of funding, which is pretty much the same thing that we've had in the last 4 years, I believe, which is $600,000 in the Safe Schools Fund to be used by LEAs for all 10 categories listed in the Safe to Learn Act. So with that, I will start with and so it is possible that it will not be in order because the way your packet is now is by alphabetical order. But I will list out each LEA so you can look at their particular request. So for equipment, we have Anne Arundel County Public School Systems requested radios and batteries. Carver County Public School Systems requesting surveillance cameras. We have Cecil County requesting radios and repeaters. Dorchester County is requesting to use their funding for radios. Frederick County would like to use their funds to purchase fire alarm control panels with an emergency communication system for about 17 schools in their jurisdiction. Harford County Public Schools would like to use their funds to purchase radios and batteries. They would also like to purchase uniforms for new school security employees who are primarily stationed in their middle and high schools. They will also like to purchase a new software application, which was included in their overall request. And it is called e-hall pass, and it allows them to manage the traffic in each of the hallways during the school year. School day, I'm sorry. The Queen Anne's County Public School System would like to use their funding to purchase radios. Talbot County Public School Systems would like to use their funding to purchase radios, radio battery and chargers, and they are also asking to use the funds to purchase 7 AEDs and the AED cabinets for those AEDs. And finally, Wycombe County Public School Systems would like to use their funding to purchase multi-unit radio chargers, radios, and part of that funding, about $5,700 of it, will go towards purchasing anti-bullying program to be administered throughout the school system.
Vicki, would you read those jurisdictions again, just to make sure everything's clear?
Sure, absolutely. Excuse me. So the jurisdictions are Anne Arundel Public County School Systems, Calvert County Public Schools, Cecil County Public Schools, Dorchester County Public Schools, Frederick County Public Schools, Harford County Public Schools, Queen Anne's County Public Schools, Talbot County Public Schools, and Wycombe County Public Schools.
So if my account is correct,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And the maximum allowable amount that they can apply for is $25,000 per jurisdiction. So all of these applications are either for 25 or slightly below the $25,000 request.
okay. So at this point in time, we have a total of 9 jurisdictions requesting grant funding for COMAR. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Do you have a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion passes.
Okay. And so we move on to jurisdictions that are requested to use their funding for training. There's about 3 of them. The first one is Howard County Public Schools. They would like to use their funding to contract out a vendor to provide mind-wise innovation science of suicide training. It would allow them to purchase 34 licenses. It's at about $300 per license. And so this training will be conducted in the school for school administrators to use. They also would like to conduct the Prepare School Crisis Prevention and Intervention Training. It's a 2 workshop for 40 school staff that will be attending, and each staff member will attend the 2 workshops. Again, Howard County would like to use their funding to conduct training via the Mind-Wise Innovation Science of Suicide Training, and also the Prepare School Crisis Prevention and Intervention Training. Montgomery County, as in previous years, would like to use their funding for training of school staff in general school safety initiatives. Just like in prior years, they contract out vendors to provide this training or use part of the funding to provide stipends for their contractual staff, as in 10-month employees, to be able to attend the classes or training. And finally, Worcester County Public Schools would like to use their funding to contract a vendor to train school personnel on development and implementation of threat assessment and crisis intervention planning. This is a software or a contractual funding for them, but it allows them to be able to bring this training to all of their staff, and they are requesting $25,000 as well. So we have all three jurisdictions requesting to use their Safe Schools Fund for training purposes.
We have 3 counties who would like to request grant funding for training. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have a question.
With the exception of Worcester County, with the other counties requesting training, will this training be available for all school staff to include bus drivers, cafeteria workers, etc.?
So, going through their application, which jurisdictions?
So Howard County and Montgomery County specifically, because I think Worcester County seems a little bit more complex than Howard is for staff.
So it is not clarified in the actual narrative, but that's a question that I could take back to the jurisdictions. The only challenge, though, in terms of whether you need that information prior to approving, is the fact that this meeting is held every quarter, and so if the approval is dependent on that response, then those systems will not receive their answers up until the next subcabinet meeting, which would be in 3 months. But I am happy to take that back and clarify that for you.
Okay, I don't think it's necessarily a condition for the approval, just perhaps a follow-up, to clarify that all staff receive this particular level of training.
Absolutely. I would do that.
And we can do that for the future. So for future applications, we can ask who are the attendees or anticipated attendees if they have a question.
Okay, so we'll go back again. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Karen. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? And since there is no further discussion, the motion passes.
And the final category is for contractual services. So we have about 6 jurisdictions that are requesting to use their Safe Schools Fund grant for contractual services. Baltimore County, I know when Kim talked about the increase in our SRO and XSC training. Baltimore County is actively hiring a lot more school security employees, so they are asking to use their FY24 funding to provide stipends for about 150. They call them student safety assistants, essentially the same as the school safety employees. And many of these employees are, 10-month employees, so they will use the funding to provide stipends or overtime pay for them to be able to attend this required training. The training is titled "Why Are We Hurting Ourselves? Help Us," and it is a professional learning seminar that will be provided for these school security employees. In addition to that, Durant County Public School would also like to use their funding to provide overtime pay for their sheriff's office deputies to provide pedestrian and traffic safety in the immediate vicinity of the schools during peak hours at the school. And in addition to that, I think it's important to note that this year, MCSS introduced a new grant, not part of the review, but it's important to know, which is the School Safety Evaluation Grant Program. It is a one-year grant that we put out this year. The last time we did this was in fiscal year 19, and we did receive quite a few applications from the LEAs. So going back to contractual services, Carroll County Public School Systems would also like to contract with the Carroll County Youth Services Bureau to provide wraparound psychiatric and therapeutic services to students in crisis. This is a request that we have had over the last 3 years from Carroll County. And as you know, the Safe Schools Fund grant is a reimbursable grant. And so part of the reimbursement process is we request to get, all of the literature related to these services that are provided, or if, third-party vendors are used, all of the billing and information that are associated with the particular services. So this is something that they've done over the last 3 years, and they're requesting the same thing for 24. Somerset County Public Schools is also requesting to contract Safer Schools Together to perform online threat assessment monitoring and provide behavioral threat assessment. In fact, this is the same request from St. Mary's County Public Schools as well. As you're aware, there are a lot of incidents that occur online at most of these jurisdictions, and many of them are now using software to be able to track some of those incidents that occur online. So both Somerset County and St. Mary's County are requesting to use their funds to contract this software to be able to monitor their student online activity during the school year. And finally, Washington County Public School Systems is requesting to use their funds. This is also a request that they have had over the last 3 years, I believe, but to provide essentially wraparound services for all of their students. Their funding, of course, is broken down in terms of professional development, community engagement, and mental health resources for their students and their staff and their student experience. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. So we have 6 counties that are requesting grant funding for contracted services. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Okay. For these services, requesting therapeutic services, are these for youth who do not qualify for Medicaid?
I'm sorry, which jurisdiction?
Looking at Washington County, I believe Carroll County as well.
So that's also information that's not readily available based on the narrative that is provided. So I can definitely follow up on that for you as well.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Okay, at this time, Major Red Phillips is here to walk us through the 2022 Hate report. Major Phillips.
Good morning, everyone. As Dr. Lawson said, I'm Major Phillips with Maryland State Police. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center. And today I'm going to provide a brief overview of hate bias in Maryland to include what the law requires, the rise of hate bias incidents not only across the state but nationwide, and what we as the Maryland State Police and MCAT expect or require to be reported to us. So I always point out that the federal definition of a hate crime differs greatly than how Maryland defines it. Department of Justice defines a hate crime as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against race, religious, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. And the federal government only requires hate crimes to be reported. In Maryland, our law requires not just hate crime, but also a hate bias incident be reported. So that's very important to understand. If you could go to the next slide, please. Maryland Public Safety Article 2-307 requires Maryland law enforcement, as well as the State Fire Marshal's Office, to provide the Maryland State Police with reports related to incidents seemingly directed against an individual or group because of their race, color, religion, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, gender, disability, national origin, and you'll notice Maryland has added homelessness, which the federal government does not include in their definition. Every year, the Maryland State Police and the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center compiles a report of these incidents, and 2022's report is available on the Maryland State Police website, and you have a copy before you of the first few pages, which includes the executive summary and key findings. So, whenever I speak about hate bias, I always point out that these incidents are underreported in Maryland. Vastly underreported. It's usually because victims are not sure what to report. They think it has to be a crime, and sometimes law enforcement is not sure what needs to be reported as a hate crime or incident. So, for example, if a school administrator finds a noose hanging in a school, it's not a crime, but that's something that should be reported. If a swastika is spray painted on a locker, that's something that we would want reported to local law enforcement. If another student uses a racial slur towards an administrator or a student, while it's not a crime, it's a hate bias incident that should be reported to law enforcement. If we expect to get an accurate annual report, we need to know each incident. So in 2016, hate crimes and hate bias incidents have risen sharply in Maryland, but nationwide as well. We speak to a lot of administrators, and they're kind of hesitant to report these incidents because they don't want students introduced into the criminal justice system. But we tell administrators, when these hate bias incidents are reported to us, we don't include student identifiers in the annual report. We only list the nature of the incident, the zip code of the incident, and the age, race, and gender of the offender, as well as the victim. And you can see on the right side what is not included. So last year in Maryland, there were 465 incidents, which is up from 388 in 2021. We had 15 counties that reported at least one incident last year. So we know it happens in every county across the state. So there's several jurisdictions that had 0 hate bias incidents. And you can see by year, the green is K through 12, yellow is highlighted, the colleges are in yellow. And you can see every year since 2015, there's been a rise, except for the 2 years students were home learning or learning virtually. But you can see there's been a sharp spike. 2022, and this year it's vastly risen. So, as I said, some counties are better at reporting hate bias than others. The top 4 counties in Maryland at reporting hate bias are Montgomery County, which reported 159 incidents last year. Baltimore County reported 98, Anne Arundel County reported 57, and Howard County reported 53. These 4 counties alone reported almost 79% of all incidents throughout the state. So it's not that these counties, or these 4 counties, have more incidents, they're just better at reporting those. So race, ethnicity, and ancestry account for almost 62% of incidents, with anti-Black or African-American accounting for 219 last year. And historically, anti-Black, anti-Semitic, and anti-gay, specifically male, are the highest targeted protected classes. So reporting shows a significant increase in anti-religion bias reporting from 57 in 2021 to 105 in 2022. That's almost an 85% increase. Specifically, anti-Semitic incidents are up from 48 in 2021 to 77 in 2022. And juveniles make up almost 20% of the victims, and they're almost 18% of the offenders. As far as the location of these crimes and incidents, last year, private residences had the highest target, followed by elementary and secondary places of education. So there were 100 incidents that took place at homes and 90 took place in schools. So if you could go to the next slide. So what I've included, or what our analysts included, were some scenarios just to show you the difference between an incident and a crime. I'll let you take a minute and read these. So this is something that might not be reported to law enforcement because it's not a crime, but it is the type of incident that we need to be aware of. You go to the next slide. So this is a crime, an assault took place. So this is one that law enforcement should definitely be aware of. Go to the next, please. So what do you guys think? Crime or this incident? So this is the threat of a crime. So this definitely needs to be reported to law enforcement. We handle it as a crime, not just a bias incident. Yes. So again, not a crime, but it's an incident that needs to be reported to law enforcement. Again, First Amendment protects their right to do this, not a crime, but it's a hate bias incident that law enforcement needs to be made aware of. I wish I brought it with me, but there was an incident in October of last year. It took place in Howard County. There were 4 male students, and they were making racial slurs towards an Asian male in the school. It came to the awareness of the administrators. Law enforcement wasn't made aware of this. We didn't get reported of it. It happened in October of last year. Our analysts somehow heard of it, reached out to Howard County. Administrators, again, like I said, didn't want to bring it to the attention of law enforcement. They didn't want these 4 students. A formal police report filed, but once we reached out to Howard County Police, they went out to the school and the report was done. So that's just an example of how vastly underreported these incidents are occurring in schools, because either administrators don't know that incidents need to be reported, or they just want to protect the students. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are there consequences for systems that do not report these to law enforcement?
Maryland law requires it, but there's nothing, I'm not aware of any penalties for them not.
So I will say there is value. So one of the things that we're doing is we work with the data that they produce. And so we are training as part of our school resource officer and security employee training. We include an entire unit on hate crime and hate bias reporting. We included that in the SRO supervisor training that we held last week. We try to work with our local school safety coordinators to remind them the importance of the reporting. Because for us, we actually have a hate crimes grant. So we provide funding to public, private, and non-public special education facilities who may be at risk for hate crimes. So there is additional, so there may not be the stick if the reporting is not done, but there is certainly the carrot, right? Which is there is funding related to us. The Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Youth and Victim Services also has a hate crimes grant that they have available. So there is some incentive for them to provide.
And if we could go back, I'm sorry. If we could go back to the chart, it had the hate bias motivations reported colleges and universities. That's it.
Two down. One more.
But there we go. So this shows there were only 5 cases at colleges and universities. We were at Frostburg University a few months ago, and the chief of police told us they had at least 16 incidents the prior year. So that's just an example of how underreporting happens. So we just need to better educate school administrators, law enforcement, and citizens. And we begin training regionally. We hold a 2-day forum. The first day we bring law enforcement, teach them what hate crime and hate bias incidents are. Second day we allow people from the community to come in with law enforcement. And we're doing this with the Maryland Commission, the Commission for Civil Rights, and the AG's office.
So Kate, thank you for what you're doing. The conversation was really geared towards, I understand school administrators are trying to spare kids with the view of going into the system. But we all know when an incident occurs, what's the first thing you do? We go back and look at every little step of history. You can't help but think, hindsight being 2020, had law enforcement got involved, social services with some type of counseling program, could that have been prevented? And also, you think from a grander scale, if you're a principal, you hold back on that, you're victimizing that victim the second time.
Any other questions I can answer?
Yeah, I guess I would just comment also, when I look at specifically the classification here, and like it's really, that's the nothing but under report. I mean, if you think about people with intellectual disabilities, it just occurs on a regular basis. So again, it's sort of having you use this information that is better educated, so we really get a better sense of what's happening.
Is there any further discussion? I would just like to say that in school systems at the beginning of the school year, there are trainings that individual school systems have. So it would be a good suggestion to include this as part of those trainings and individual student trainings to take a more active role in certain active people have situations where there are incidents that should be reported on.
And we're more than happy to partner with the also schools.
Yeah, we can facilitate getting that information to the local superintendents.
Kate, is this a topic that generally is addressed at the conference?
So it has been in the past. It was not this past year, but it has been in the past. And we can certainly bring it back. So that would be an excellent topic if we can get individuals to present on the importance of reporting. It's a good group of individuals. Because again, our conference is bigger than just the public schools, right? It includes, we're starting to get some higher ed folks attending, and then obviously the private and non-public schools.
So David Curry is our hate bias subject matter expert. Analyst. He will constantly report. So if you want more detailed numbers, feel free to take down this information.
Thank you, Major Phillips. This is certainly a worthwhile conversation and one that hopefully will get spin into the school system. So thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, our upcoming meeting dates. We have a slide to show those upcoming meeting dates. As always, the most up-to-date information about meetings is always available on the MCSS website. So we have those dates on the projection now. So you will be staying on the screen now. I apologize, Carol, stop laughing and say, Carol, so date yourself, Dr. Lawson, but on the screen now. So please take note of those. And next, I'm going to read a statement that will allow the subcabinet to go into a closed session. The subcabinet will not be returning to the open session following the closed session. Pursuant Pursuant to subsection 3-305B1 of the Central Provisions Article of the Annotated Report Journal, the Subcabinet will adjourn to a closed session to discuss personnel matters. I will now enter a motion to go into closed session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The subcabinet will adjourn, directly from the closed session. Thank you.